Bad cards exist in every deck in Flesh and Blood, and every time you forget this, you risk losing a game. Welcome to Magic Omens. I'm Haroe, and in this video I'll explain step by step why that is. By the end of it, you'll be able to apply this knowledge to improve both your deck building and your play. The defining characteristic of a bad card is usually a blue line across the top. Otherwise, it can be a card only effective when combined with a specific other card. If we're talking sealed, yellow cards and most generic attacks also make the list. These are the cards you don't want to play out alone if you don't have to, and you don't really want to arsenal them either. They're just weak. If you draw 4 of them, you're immediately losing tempo. But you have to run blue cards, as they're the resource fuel for your turns. Making the most out of them is solved in 2 phases. The first one is deck building, where you have to find the least bad blues. The second one is learning to play in anticipation of bad hands. Both phases are approached differently by each hero, but they can generally be classified into aggressive and defensive choices. Aggressive strategies include a high number of red cards and a low number of blues. They tend to play for the first cycle of the deck, meaning they prefer to win without reaching their pitch cards. The goal is to gain tempo and not drop it until the game's won, consistently pushing bits of damage through and setting up big turns. So what should the bad cards do? For starters, it doesn't hurt if they defend 3. Defense is one stat that remains the same on action cards regardless of their pitch. Aggro decks don't want to block, but that doesn't mean they won't have to. After all, tempo can be stolen through armor at least once a game. Higher priority though are good effects that don't change with pitch. For example, blue Plunder Run draws a card just the same as the red. Blue Hit and Run gives Dawnblade Go Again, and blue Vexing Malice still has the annoying 2 arcane damage attached. These effects are important when going into the second cycle against slower decks, or when a hand with 2 or 3 blue cards shows up. You need these cards to have useful effects, so that the precious reds you draw together with them have the tools to deal damage. Finally, there might be an additional requirement imposed by some other part of the deck. Katsu running only 0-cost blues for Kodachis is the basic example of that. Avoiding bad hands in gameplay boils down to abusing Arsenal. If you play to spend exactly 4 cards out of every hand, you'll encounter 2 issues. First, your damage ceiling is lower for each hand, even the good ones, making it easier for the opponent to soak it all up and fatigue you. Second, if you draw a bad hand, you'll have a weak attack and be forced to arsenal a bad card afterwards. By withholding a strong tool from a good hand and placing it into arsenal, both earlier scenarios are now much better. A good 4-card hand has an extra card to work with, raising the ceiling of the turn and pushing more damage. Not to mention the possibility of drawing cards that interact strongly with your arsenal. And second, a weak hand now has a tool that works to maintain tempo and aggression. A lesson is, pay attention to your deck. If you've been drawing perfect hands 3 turns in a row, you should expect something to slip up and screw you really soon, so think about how to prevent it through arsenal. This works the other way around too. If you start the game off seeing too many blues turn after turn and can't use them all, keep that extra blue in hand instead of reaching for arsenal, so that you don't draw into 4 reds you then cannot play out. Defensive strategies tend to include a higher blue count and a more compact set of key red cards that rely more on card interactions. These decks are usually classified as combo or control. In both cases, the decks intend to set up and then find a point to pivot and turn the game on its head. For combo decks, this requires assembling a certain board state and the mandatory combo pieces. For control decks, it involves a disciplined process of filtering the bad cards through blocking and setting up pitch for the second cycle, all the while chipping away at the opponent with efficient weapon attacks. Once the bottom of the deck is reached, it's time to turn the tides and bring on the onslaught that only a meticulously stacked deck can present. Since blue cards are used only to pitch and block, most of them should defend for 3. A weapon like Anatos can impose another condition to them, but generally these cards are there to be filtered out. A common trap new players on defensive strategies fall into is not recognizing just how bad the bad cards are in their decks. They draw 1 good hand and want to immediately play it out, so they take a ton of damage to do so, maybe even give up some armor to prevent a non-hit. Suppose they do this on Bravo to play a dominated Crippling Crush. What happens the next turn when they draw into 4 blues? Yep, Anatos for 6 and Tears of Sadness as some amount of health and armor is gone forever. Healthy armor is crucial to a strong pivot, and it shouldn't be carelessly thrown away before the bad cards are filtered out of the deck. Bravo will do much better if he pitches that Crippling Crush alongside some Tear Asunders, Spinal Crushes, and Pummels. When he reaches the bottom of the deck, he can armor block and start a relentless onslaught of decimating, dominate attacks. If a deck plays offensively in some matchups and defensively in others, it's classified as midrange. Selecting blues becomes more challenging, as they have to be applicable to the aggressive game plan while still providing a solid base for defense. Examples of decks that can pull this off seamlessly are Dash, Katsu, and Bravo. While a control Dash deck would run a lot of defense reactions and 3-block non-attack actions to help defend in matchups such as Boltyn, midrange will opt to run Blue Mechanologist attack action cards instead. When the time to flip the switch with High Octane comes, a boost card is a boost card, red or blue, and hitting boosts is necessary to provide extra action points for the pistol shots. Drafting bad cards is a topic for some future video, but just try to get as many 3-block generics, class yellows, and class blues when nothing else is appealing. Draft is naturally a slower format that favors setup, so follow the control philosophy when picking your cards. That's it for this video. If you're not familiar with the ideas presented, I urge you to give them some thought and try applying them both on a deck building level and in your play. I'm sure you'll quickly start noticing improvements and gain even more appreciation for the beauty of this game. Until next time.